What if Spider-Man? Brand New Day is hiding more than the movie actually tells us, because the strangest part of this movie isn't what happened. It's what the movie refuses to explain. How did Spider-Man suddenly end up in outer space? Who sent the signal that led him there? How does his tracker work across dimensions? Why does Elena already know about VMAX? Why was Sarah specifically targeted? What happened to the Punisher? And why does he suddenly look completely different? Some of these might be genuine plot holes, but others feel like setup for what's coming next. So let's break down the biggest unanswered questions in Spider-Man: Brand New Day, and the theories that could actually explain them. Let's start with the opening. We see Spider-Man go from Queens straight into outer space, but the movie never properly explains how he got there. And more importantly, who sent the signal that brought him there? When director Destin Daniel Cretton was asked about it, he basically teased that the answer could be revealed in a future project. That sounds less like a forgotten detail, and more like Marvel deliberately keeping a secret. And with the possibility of another Spider-Man trilogy ahead, there's a good chance this mystery is being saved for the next chapter. There was even speculation surrounding Cretton's involvement with Wonder Man Season 2, which was reportedly canceled, so it's possible Marvel simply wants him focused on Spider-Man's next story. But there's another mystery: how did Spider-Man's tracker work in outer space? We know Ned wasn't tracking a device physically attached to Peter. Instead, people who encounter Spider-Man can update the app. And since Peter is now technically close with Ned again, and Peter himself may have access to that system, there's a possibility Peter manually triggered an update. Maybe he realized he was trapped somewhere outside Earth and left Ned a digital breadcrumb. Basically, I'm here, come find me. And considering Peter's intelligence, using whatever alien or advanced technology was available to send that signal isn't impossible. It could even be how the Avengers eventually locate him, which brings us to another question. Why does Peter still have a connection to the Avengers? Because technically, Peter Parker was already an Avenger. Tony Stark literally welcomed him into the Avengers during Infinity War. He fought alongside them in Infinity War and Endgame, and even after the events of No Way Home, Spider-Man's heroic history still exists. People forgot Peter Parker. They didn't forget Spider-Man. MJ and Ned even remember that Spider-Man saved them. They simply don't know who's underneath the mask. So when Elena interacts with Spider-Man, it's possible she doesn't see him as some random vigilante. She sees him as someone with an established history alongside Earth's heroes. That could explain why Peter has access to places and people that would normally be completely out of his reach. And yes, that includes the Avengers. But there's one moment that sounds like a joke and actually tells us something pretty interesting about how Spider-Man is viewed now. Elena basically treats him like big potato, small potato. And honestly, Spider-Man is not small potatoes. This is the guy who stood against Captain America, took down Vulture, outsmarted Mysterio, fought Thanos, and survived multiple multiversal disasters. Technically, Peter Parker has already earned his place among the Avengers. So when Elena treats him like some minor player, it feels less like a power ranking, and more like Marvel showing us how disconnected Peter has become from the superhero world. Everyone remembers Spider-Man, they just don't remember Peter Parker, and that difference could become extremely important going forward. This one looks confusing until you pay attention to what the movie actually shows. Elena doesn't necessarily know about a secret VMAX program. Instead, VMAX appears to have been something people inside DODC were actively searching for. Jean manipulates around 30 DODC employees and digs through their information. That search reaches a much higher level of security. So Elena could simply have discovered that someone was searching for VMAX and connected that information to what was happening. And eventually, we discover that VMAX is connected to the experiments involving Sarah. So the mystery isn't necessarily how did Elena know about the program? It's why was DODC searching for VMAX in the first place? And that leads directly to Sarah. This is one of the biggest unanswered questions in the movie. Bill has apparently been experimenting on Sarah because of her telepathic abilities. But why Sarah? How did he even discover that she had those powers? One possibility is Sarah's own mother. Remember the conversation between Jean and Sarah? Their mother basically abandoned them after their powers appeared and treated them like freaks. It's possible she gave DODC information about the girls. That could explain how Sarah ended up on Bill's radar. But there's an even bigger question: why was the government allowed to abduct her? Sarah hadn't committed a crime. Having powers doesn't automatically give the government the right to kidnap someone. So Bill is clearly crossing a line here, and the movie seems to be setting up a future reveal explaining what Bill actually wanted from Sarah. His stated goal is to replicate her abilities, but why is he so obsessed with mutants specifically? There are already countless superhumans in this universe. Why focus on mutants? That could be the beginning of something much bigger, possibly even the foundation of an anti-mutant storyline. This is another detail that seems like a plot hole. If Jean can enter someone's mind, why didn't she simply enter Bill's mind and find out what happened to Sarah? There's a possible explanation. At that point in the story, Jean's abilities were still limited. She appears to only be able to control one mind at a time, and during that sequence, she was already controlling the Punisher. So switching from Frank's mind to Bill's could have left her completely exposed. If the Punisher suddenly regained control, everything could fall apart. And later in the movie, Jean's powers expand dramatically. Her range increases to roughly a 1-kilometer radius, suggesting that she was nowhere near her full potential earlier. So the limitation may have been intentional. Now we get to one of the biggest MCU mysteries, because the last time we saw the Punisher, he looked completely different. He had a beard. Now, clean-shaven, and even his Punisher logo appears faded. That suggests something happened between those appearances, something important. We also know his previous story wasn't completely resolved. The Nuki family revenge storyline was left hanging. So one theory is that Frank finished that unfinished business off-screen and then decided to start over, which could explain the clean shave and his new appearance. But there's another major change. He doesn't seem to be treated like a fugitive anymore. Instead, he's basically operating as a violent anti-hero. He's still killing criminals, but he's doing it openly enough that he can move around New York. With Kingpin no longer controlling the city and the corrupt law enforcement network connected to him weakened, Frank has more freedom. That doesn't mean he's completely safe. His safe house is still filled with traps designed to stop anyone from following him. He's hiding. He's just not running from the law in the same way anymore. And that's why I describe his current status as a gray area rather than simply calling him a fugitive. But there's something even more interesting. Throughout the movie, the Punisher repeatedly reminds Spider-Man, "I saved you." That means something happened between these two characters that we haven't seen yet. And Marvel has done this before. Remember the mysterious event involving Hawkeye and Black Widow that was referenced years before we finally learned what happened? Marvel waited nearly a decade before giving us the full story. So don't be surprised if Spider-Man and Punisher's missing adventure gets explained in another movie or series years later. Personally, I think Frank probably completed the Nuki revenge storyline during that period. And if that's true, it could explain why he's trying to start a new chapter of his life. It could also set up a Spider-Man and Punisher team-up in the future. There's another continuity detail the movie barely addresses. If Kingpin is no longer running New York, who's the mayor now? The movie strongly suggests it could be Sheila. She's the one who gives Spider-Man the key to the city. But the movie never really explains what happened after Kingpin's downfall. That's a pretty noticeable continuity gap, especially because his previous conflict with Spider-Man should have had major consequences for New York. Even one line acknowledging it would have made the transition feel much smoother. And finally, Spider-Man gets seriously injured and is taken to the hospital. So how did nobody discover who was underneath the mask? Interestingly, there was reportedly a deleted sequence involving Claire Temple, played by Rosario Dawson. She was apparently supposed to appear as the nurse treating Spider-Man. That scene could have explained why his identity remained protected, but it was removed. So without that sequence, the movie leaves us with another unanswered question. Who treated Peter, and how did they avoid discovering his identity? If that deleted footage ever gets officially released, it could fill in the gap. And that's what makes Brand New Day interesting. Some of these are probably genuine plot holes, but others feel like deliberate mysteries. The outer space signal, VMAX, Sarah's powers, Bill's obsession with mutants, Jean's limitations, the Punisher's missing story, Kingpin's disappearance, the new mayor, and the mysterious connection between Spider-Man and the Avengers. Marvel doesn't necessarily need to answer all of these immediately, but if even half of them are connected, Spider-Man's next story could be much bigger than we think. And honestly, that's what I want from the next movie. Don't wait 10 years to explain these mysteries. Give us the missing pieces. Because Spider-Man and the Punisher clearly have a story we haven't seen yet, and I want to know what happened. So which unanswered question from Brand New Day do you think Marvel is secretly saving for the future? Drop your theory in the comments.